Hi everyone, this is Mindy Eggen and welcome back. In today's video, we are going to be doing some ink smooshing to create a distressed background. Typically when I do a background like this, I'm thinking more in vibrant colors and kind of messy and just a card that really stands out. But today we're going to take that ink smooshed background and make an elegant card out of it. So the colors I'm using today is Salvaged Patina and Rustic Wilderness in Distress Oxide. I'm taking the Salvaged Patina and I'm smooshing that down onto my craft mat in 3 different areas, kind of spread out. And then I'm going to take that Rustic Wilderness and do the same thing. Just smoosh that down onto my craft surface and kind of spread it out a little bit. Next, I'm going to take my spritzer bottle, which just has clean water in it, and I'm going to spray the entire area there. I'm going to take a piece of Ranger Heavy Stock cardstock. This is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to just smoosh that down into that mixture on my mat. I'll kind of twist and turn it and really push down to pick up as much ink as I can. And this is going to be my first layer. You can see that it's not the greatest, but when it's coming to ink smooshing, it's really best to work in layers, which means I need to dry this. So I'm taking my heat tool, I'll dry that background completely, and now see all those beaded inky areas. I'm just going to take my cardstock and tap it into those beaded up areas. This is also why I'm working on this Ranger craft mat versus a glass board or a glass media mat, because the ink beads up on that surface. It won't do it as well on a glass surface. So really best to work on these craft sheets and get all that beaded areas on there. That creates a lot of interest to your background. So I wiped my surface off and I needed some more of that salvaged patina. I had some kind of soft areas or white areas. So I wanted to swipe this cardstock through that salvaged patina to kind of fill in those areas. I thought about bringing in a little bit darker of a blue, but I just really loved this combination. I'll dry that with my heat tool, and then I placed it into a box off on the side, and I'm going to add splatters to this. I am using Gold Perfect Pearls that I scooped out. I'm adding a couple drops of water, mixing that together with my paintbrush, and then adding splatters to my surface. Now my surface is completely dry at this point. So I will splatter that and then set that off on the side to dry. Next, I'm going to be using the Lovely Layers Heart Vine. This is a 2-piece die. One is a solid, one has the outline piece. I'm only using the solid piece for today. So I started out by cutting it first from vellum and then a second time from white cardstock. I'm also going to die cut the Buzzword Honey Cut from some matte gold cardstock, and I also die cut it 3 more times from white, and I will layer these all together to add dimension to the front of the card. For my stamping, I am using the Buzzword stamp set, so I just picked out one of the smaller sentiments on there. I'm placing this in my Misty tool on some black cardstock and using my Misty corner ruler to make sure that is straight. Then I can pick that up with the door of the Misty, remove my ruler, and then prep my cardstock with an anti-static powder tool since I'm going to be doing some heat embossing. I like to do my stamping in a pigment ink, so this is a white pigment ink. I'm going to gently stamp that down, and I will do it one more time to make sure it has a really good impression. Pigment ink stays wet longer than dye ink, which makes it great for heat embossing. Then I sprinkled on my white embossing powder, and after my heat tool is nice and warmed up, I'm going to melt that embossing powder. I'm going to trim this down into a skinny sentiment strip, so I'm using my mini trimmer to do this. And after I had trimmed it out, I decided it wasn't skinny enough. So in order for me to do that, I'll show you this little trick that I did to help line that back up, because that can be really hard to put back in the trimmer. So I'm flipping it over and I am lining it back up with that cardstock that it came from, and I'm holding it together with Post-it tape on the back. So that's holding my skinny strip to that cardstock, and then I can push that back into my trimmer, and I'm going to get just a sliver off of it, so just barely cutting some off. I can remove that sentiment, turn it so I can get the top part of it, and then I can line that back up into my trimmer and trim off the top. So now I have just the perfect size for this small sentiment. For attaching my card, I trimmed down my smushed panel to about 4 by 5 1/4, and I also cut 3 more pieces of white cardstock to that same size and layered together. Then I could add my smushed panel to those layers. I'm using a lot of adhesive because this is kind of a warped panel. I did run it through my die cut machine to help flatten it out, but it still has a little bit of warping to it. So just using that much adhesive really helps hold that down. Now I'm using a side folding card base that I created. I'm holding it closed with some washi tape and I'm placing it in my MISTI tool tucked down into the corner. This really helps me when I'm lining up panels on the front of my card bases. So I added that adhesive to the back of my panel and I could place this on top of my card base. Now for adding my heart vines to the front of the card, I'm just going to use the Honeybee liquid glue. I'm adding dots all over the solid one. So this is the white piece that I die cut. I'm going to line that up off on the side and just hold that down for a few seconds to make sure it is really adhered to that panel. And then for the vellum, I'm just adding little dots kind of where the vines are, not so much on the hearts. Now, typically you see glue through vellum, but for this, because we're overlapping it, you're not really going to be able to tell. And I like to put some blocks on top to just hold that down for a little bit. Then I can attach my U that I die cut out. Now the tail of the U is also going to overlap those heart vines, so that's also going to help hold that down. And then I have my smaller sentiment that I added black foam squares behind, and I'll place that underneath my die cut word. So you didn't need to add a lot of glue to your vellum piece because we have so much going on top of it. And I kind of like that little bit of extra zhuzh, as Laura calls it, to the front of the card. To finish this off, I am using some gem stickers. This is the raw honey, and there's these gorgeous crystal ones on there that are nice and small and delicate and perfect for the front of this card. That finishes up the card project for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and it's kind of given you some more ideas with your ink smushed backgrounds, just changing up your colors, adding some soft, delicate die pieces to the front to really help make that an elegant card. Thanks so much for joining me, and see you soon.